There comes a day in every person's life when you wake up and realize the hardest fight you'll ever face isn't out there in the world. It's not your job, your bills, your past, or even the people who doubt you. It's you. The voice inside your head that whispers, "You can't." That voice is the real enemy, and if you ever hope to win in life, you must first win that battle within. It was a gray morning when Ethan Cole learned this truth. He sat alone in his small apartment, staring at the unpaid bills scattered across the table. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. Outside, the city was waking up, cars honking, people rushing, but Ethan just sat there, frozen in his chair, wondering when his life had stopped moving. He had once dreamed of building his own business. He had read books, made plans, and even saved a little money. But every time he was about to start, fear whispered in his ear. "What if you fail? What will people say? You're not ready." And so, like millions of others, Ethan listened to that voice, and did nothing. That morning, something inside him broke. He realized he had spent years running from discomfort, choosing safety over growth, excuses over action. He had been waiting for the right time, the right feeling, the right sign. But deep down, he knew those things never come. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and remembered something his grandfather once told him before he passed away. "Ethan, life will test you. But the test won't come from the world. It'll come from your own mind. If you can master yourself, the world will follow." Ethan hadn't understood it then. But now, it hit him like a hammer. He wasn't losing because life was unfair. He was losing because he kept surrendering to himself. Napoleon Hill once wrote, "If you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self." And that was exactly where Ethan found himself, trapped in his own excuses, chained by his own fear. As the day went on, he decided to try something different. He took a notebook, flipped it open, and wrote in big letters, "The battle within." Then beneath it, fear versus faith, comfort versus growth, excuse versus action. He stared at the words for a long time. Then he circled the last one, action. Something about that word pulled at him. He realized he didn't need to win the entire war today. He just needed to take one small step. So he did. He made one phone call to a friend who ran a small printing business. He asked questions, took notes, made a list of what he needed to get started. It wasn't much, but for the first time in months he moved. That night, as he lay in bed, fear came back, stronger this time. "What if you fail again?" it whispered. "What if you lose what little you have left?" But instead of running from it, Ethan faced it. He whispered back, "Maybe I will, but at least I won't quit." And that was the first victory. Napoleon Hill believed that every person carries within them two invisible generals. One leads you forward, the other pulls you back. The one who wins is the one you feed. Most people feed fear, doubt, laziness, the generals of defeat. But the few who rise, they feed discipline, courage, and persistence. Hill called this the power of self-mastery. It's the foundation of all success. Because no matter how skilled or intelligent you are, if you can't control your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, you'll always be a prisoner of circumstance. Ethan didn't know it yet, but by taking that small step, he had begun his training. Each day became a test of will. Every time he woke up tired but forced himself to work, he strengthened his inner power. Every time he wanted to give up but kept going anyway, he chipped away at the chains that had held him for years. It wasn't glamorous. There was no applause. But something remarkable was happening. He was changing. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's tiny idea started to take shape. He began printing motivational posters. Quotes from the very people who had inspired him: Marcus Aurelius, Frederick Douglass, Napoleon Hill himself. At first, nobody bought them. But he didn't stop. He kept posting online. Kept improving the designs. Kept repeating the same daily actions. Slowly, orders began to trickle in. Then a little faster. One morning, he received an email from a teacher who said, "Your posters inspired my students. Thank you for reminding them to keep going." Ethan sat there, staring at the message, and smiled. For the first time in his life, he understood what Hill meant when he said, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." The years of doubt, fear, and failure had not destroyed him, they had forged him. You see, the world doesn't change because you wish it to. It changes because you do. When you push through pain, When you choose discipline over comfort, something inside you begins to shift. The burdens that once crushed you grow lighter. The wounds that once defined you begin to heal. The obstacles that blocked your path reveal hidden doors. And slowly, quietly, the world rearranges itself around your persistence. That night, Ethan wrote one final note in his journal. The battle never ends. But I am no longer afraid of the fight. He smiled, turned off the light, and slept peacefully, not because life had become easy, but because he had learned to be strong. Moral: in Napoleon Hill's spirit, success begins in the mind. You cannot master your destiny until you master yourself. The first victory is always within. White heavy check mark. End of part 1. The battle within. Next part. The weight of endurance. How Ethan learns to stay unbroken when life tests his limits. Would you like me to continue with part 2, 1,000 words? The weight of endurance. In the same style and tone next? Title: The Fire That Never Dies Part 2. When pain becomes purpose. Hook. Everyone wants to grow, until pain shows up. Pain is the price of every dream, the toll you pay for wanting more out of life. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask permission. It walks right in, sits beside you, and dares you to quit. Most people do. But a few, a very few, learn to make pain their teacher. And when they do, they discover something extraordinary. Pain isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of purpose. The first real blow came for Ethan one cold February night. His small printing business, the one he had built from nothing, was barely surviving. He'd poured every dollar, every hour, every bit of faith he had into it. Then, out of nowhere, the supplier he depended on went bankrupt. Orders stopped. Customers grew impatient. And with each passing day, the dream he'd fought so hard for slipped further away. He didn't sleep much that week. He sat at his desk long after midnight, surrounded by silence and unpaid invoices. His hands trembled as he scrolled through his bank account. Nearly empty. That's when the voice inside returned. It's over, Ethan. You gave it your best shot. Nobody would blame you for walking away. For the first time in months, he almost listened. He turned off the lights and sat in the dark, his face buried in his hands. It wasn't just about losing money. It was the pain of watching something he loved slowly die. The same kind of pain that makes people give up on their marriages, their health, their dreams. He whispered to himself. Why does it have to hurt so much to care? Napoleon Hill once said, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But when you're sitting in the ashes of something you built, that truth feels far away. Still, Ethan had read enough of Hill's work to know one thing: pain, when faced, becomes power. If he ran from it, it would haunt him forever. But if he faced it, really faced it, it might just shape him into something stronger. So he didn't run. That night, he opened his notebook again, the same one from the beginning of his journey. He wrote, I will not waste this pain. I will learn from it. Then he made a list of what this failure was trying to teach him. Point 1. Depend on yourself first. Point 2. Build systems, not hope. Point 3. Stay calm under fire. Point 4. Pain is not punishment, it's preparation. He didn't know it then, but that list became his turning point. Over the next few weeks, he worked like a man possessed. He found new suppliers. He redesigned his website. He personally delivered orders when the couriers failed. But more than anything, he began to see pain differently. Every setback, every angry customer, every sleepless night became part of his training. He began to understand what Hill meant by every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success, if you will look for it. Pain, he realized, was a message, not from fate, but from himself. It was asking, how much do you really want this? One day, as he was delivering posters to a local bookstore, the owner, a kind older woman named Mrs. Turner, noticed the exhaustion on his face. She poured him a cup of coffee and said, You look like you've been fighting the whole world, son. He smiled weakly. Sometimes it feels that way. Good, she said, nodding. It means you're still alive. Pain means you still care. That sentence hit him harder than any motivational quote ever could. Pain wasn't proof of weakness. It was proof of passion. He realized that his pain was not trying to destroy him. It was shaping him, carving away the old version of himself who ran from fear, who gave up too easily, who waited for comfort. Every great person, Napoleon Hill taught, has walked through their own fire. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times. Abraham Lincoln lost elections, businesses, and people he loved, but he refused to surrender. Even Hill himself endured poverty and despair before discovering his purpose. Ethan began to see himself in those stories. He wasn't failing. He was forging. He wrote again in his journal. Pain is the forge. I am the metal. I will not break. I will be shaped. A few months later, things began to turn around. The business was small, but stable. Customers started sharing his designs online, posting them in schools, offices, and gyms. But the biggest change wasn't in his income. It was in his heart. He had become calmer, steadier, stronger. When new problems came, and they always did, he didn't panic. He faced them with quiet confidence. Knowing that the pain of today was preparing him for tomorrow. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What is this teaching me?" One evening, as he walked home under a golden sunset, he saw a group of young men sitting outside a cafe, arguing about their lives. One of them said, "Man, I tried. I really did. But it's too hard. Maybe it's just not meant to be." Ethan smiled, remembering how often he had said those same words. He walked over, handed the young man one of his posters, a simple black and white design that read, "Turn pain into purpose." The young man looked at it, confused. "What's this supposed to mean?" Ethan said softly. "It means you're not done yet. Not if it still hurts." Then he walked away. That night, he wrote in his notebook one last time before bed. "Pain is not my enemy. It is my guide. Every scar tells me I've lived, I've cared, and I've grown. Pain is the proof that I'm still becoming who I was meant to be." Moral: in Napoleon Hill's spirit, pain is not the end, it's the beginning of transformation. Every hardship carries a lesson, every loss hides a seed of strength. When you stop running from pain and start learning from it, you unlock your true power. You don't just survive, you evolve. White heavy check mark. End of part 2. When pain becomes purpose. Next part. The discipline of thought. How Ethan learns to master his mind and control the invisible forces shaping his destiny. Would you like me to continue with part 3? The discipline of thought. 1,000 words, next, in the same tone and Napoleon Hill story style? Title: The Hunger Within, Part 3, Mastering Desire, according to Napoleon Hill, from the series. When pain becomes purpose. Look, he had everything a man could want: money, power, admiration. Yet, every night, he stared at the ceiling with a hollow feeling inside. No matter how many deals he closed or how many zeros sat in his bank account, the hunger never stopped. It whispered in his ear, "More, just a little more." But that voice never left, no matter how much he fed it. This is the story of that hunger, the one that lives in every human heart, and how Napoleon Hill's timeless lessons show us the path to mastering it before it consumes us. Part 3. The hunger within. There's a kind of hunger that has nothing to do with food. It starts small, like a spark, a quiet wanting for something better, a new car, a bigger house, a promotion, recognition, love, or even revenge. At first, it feels harmless. After all, what's wrong with wanting more out of life? But slowly, the hunger grows. It becomes restless, demanding. It whispers that what you have is never enough. It twists your simple wishes into cravings that keep you awake at night. You start chasing things you don't even need, hoping each new prize will finally silence the ache inside. That's when desire becomes a trap. Napoleon Hill once wrote, "Control your thoughts. Direct your desires. Do not let them control you." He understood that every person fights this invisible battle, the battle between what they truly need and what their restless mind tells them they want. The merchant who couldn't stop. In the early 1900s, there was a merchant in New York named Henry Wallace. He came from nothing and built a successful chain of clothing stores through hard work and smart choices. But as his business grew, so did his desire for more. At first, he wanted to open 5 stores. Then 10. Then 20. Soon, the joy that once fueled his dream was gone. He no longer celebrated success. He feared losing it. He stopped sleeping. He stopped smiling. One day, his accountant asked him, "When will it be enough, Mr. Wallace?" Henry laughed bitterly and said, "When I own them all." But all never came. Within a few years, his expansion outpaced his ability to manage it. The empire he built with passion crumbled under the weight of unchecked desire. The emperor's secret. Thousands of years before Henry Wallace, A Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius faced the same temptation, but from the opposite side of the world and in a far greater position of power. He could have indulged in every pleasure imaginable: wealth, feasts, and the admiration of an empire. Yet he chose simplicity. He slept on a soldier's cot, ate plain food, and wrote nightly in his journal about the importance of mastering desire. He understood what Hill later echoed: freedom doesn't come from having everything, it comes from needing less. The whisper of more desire is clever. It always disguises itself as motivation. It tells you, keep going, you're almost there. And while ambition can lead to great things, blind craving leads only to exhaustion and emptiness. Hill warned of this illusion. He said that uncontrolled desire was like a fire. It could warm your home or burn it to the ground. When you feed every impulse, new clothes, new gadgets, constant entertainment, you lose your power of choice. You become a slave to the next thing, the next high. But when you pause before chasing every whim, when you stop and ask, do I really need this? You take back control. That small moment of resistance is the birthplace of freedom. The test of true power. There was a story Napoleon Hill told about a steel magnate who once hired him to analyze why so many promising men failed after achieving success. Hill discovered that success wasn't what destroyed them, it was what came after. Once they achieved comfort, they started craving ease instead of challenge, praise instead of purpose. They let their desires grow unchecked until their discipline disappeared. Hill wrote, "The power that brings wealth is the same power that can destroy it, unless directed by self-control. True power isn't about getting more, it's about mastering the urge to chase more. The moment of choice. Every day, you face moments that test this principle. When you see something you want but don't need. When you compare your life to someone else's highlight reel online. When you think, if I just had that, I'd be happy. In those moments, your future is decided. You can let desire lead you deeper into frustration, or you can pause, breathe, and ask the powerful question Hill taught his students. Will this bring me peace, or will it bring me another chain? Each time you choose peace over impulse, you become stronger. Each act of restraint builds the foundation of inner freedom. A lesson from the teacher in chains. Epictetus, the philosopher Hill often quoted, was once a slave. He had nothing, not freedom, not wealth, not even control over his body. But he possessed the one thing no one could take, mastery over his thoughts. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters." Even in chains, he refused to let desire or anger control him. He became proof that real power lives within, not in possessions or status. Turning desire into direction. Desire itself isn't evil, it's energy. It's the spark that drives invention, creation, and progress. The key is to direct it. Hill taught that when you channel desire toward a clear purpose, something that serves not just yourself but others, it transforms from hunger into fuel. He wrote, "The starting point of all achievement is desire, but it must be disciplined desire. You can use your longing to create something great, to build, to serve, to grow, but only if you remain the master, never the servant, of what you want." Closing reflection. The truth is simple but hard. Happiness doesn't live out there. It begins the moment you stop running and realize that peace isn't something you earn, it's something you allow. Desire will always whisper. But when you learn to smile at it and walk away, you've won a victory greater than any possession could bring. Call to action. If this story speaks to you, remember, self-mastery begins with awareness. Share this message with someone who's chasing more but finding less. Subscribe, like, and comment below. What's one desire you've learned to let go of, and how did it change you? Title: The Discipline of Thought, Part 4, according to Napoleon Hill, from the series When Pain Becomes Purpose. Hook. It started with a single negative thought. I can't do this. That one whisper turned into doubt, and soon doubt became fear. Fear grew into inaction, and before he knew it, his dreams began to fade, not because the world stopped him, but because his mind did. This is how most people lose the battle long before it even begins. Not in the real world, but in their own thoughts. Napoleon Hill taught that the mind is the greatest battlefield, and only those who learn to discipline it can ever win at life. Part 4. The Discipline of Thought. Napoleon Hill believed that the greatest power given to man is the power to think. Every success, every invention, every revolution in history began as a thought. But what most people never realize is that the same power that creates miracles can also create misery. Your mind, Hill said, is like a garden. If you plant seeds of courage, discipline, and hope, it grows a life filled with strength. But if you neglect it, weeds of fear, doubt, and negativity will take over and choke every dream you've ever had. The story of the two gardens. There once were two friends, James and Robert, who both dreamed of building their own businesses. James was careful about what he allowed into his mind. Each morning he read something positive, wrote down his goals, and focused on gratitude. Robert, on the other hand, filled his thoughts with complaints about the economy, about people, about luck. When challenges came, as they always do, James's disciplined mind searched for solutions. Robert's undisciplined mind searched for excuses. Years later, James's business flourished. Robert's failed. The difference wasn't talent, education, or luck, it was mindset. Napoleon Hill would have said that James had trained his mind to obey him, while Robert had become a servant to his thoughts. The hidden enemy within, your greatest enemy, isn't the critic outside, it's the voice inside your head telling you to give up. Hill wrote, "Your only limitation is the one you set up in your own mind." Most people never control that voice. They wake up each day and let their minds run wild, thinking about fears, regrets, failures, and what could go wrong. If you let your thoughts drift without direction, they'll lead you straight into confusion and misery. But when you take control, when you begin to choose your thoughts, you step into a new kind of power. The emperor who wrote his mind into order, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor Hill admired, ruled one of the largest empires in history. But each night, he sat down to write his thoughts. He questioned his anger, corrected his fears, and reminded himself to focus on reason and virtue. He didn't do this for others, he did it to train his mind. He knew that ruling millions meant nothing if he couldn't rule himself. Napoleon Hill taught the same principle. Before you can control your circumstances, you must first control your mind. The battle of the morning. Every morning is a new war. The moment you open your eyes, your thoughts start to rush in, some good, some bad. Worries about money, work, relationships, and your future all fight for space in your head. If you don't stand guard, negativity will win before breakfast. That's why Hill insisted on a daily mental routine. He called it autosuggestion, reprogramming your mind by feeding it the right thoughts every single day. He said, "You are what you think, all day long." Start your day by saying something powerful to yourself, even if you don't yet believe it. I am capable. I am focused. I am growing stronger. Repeat it until your mind starts to believe it. Because once your mind believes, the body and the world follow. The prison of negative thinking. Napoleon Hill once visited a man who had inherited a large fortune. The man was wealthy, but miserable. He feared losing everything, distrusted everyone, and couldn't enjoy a single moment. Hill realized that this man wasn't rich, he was imprisoned by his own thoughts. He told him, "You may own money, but your fear owns you." Fear and worry are chains that you put on yourself. They don't exist in the real world, they live only in your imagination. The moment you discipline your mind to stop feeding those fears, they vanish like smoke. The quiet power of observation. Hill believed that one of the greatest acts of self-discipline is learning to observe your thoughts without obeying them. When you feel anger rising, you can pause and ask, "Why am I angry? What story am I telling myself?" When fear whispers, "You can't do this," you can ask, "Who decided that?" Each time you question a thought, you weaken its control over you. Slowly, you begin to master the most important habit of all, the ability to think deliberately. The blacksmith and the flame. There's an old story Hill loved to tell. A blacksmith once worked in unbearable heat every day, hammering metal until his hands were covered in burns. Yet, he never complained. When someone asked him how he endured such pain, he said, "The fire that burns the metal also strengthens it." Your mind works the same way. Every time life tests you, every hardship, every failure, it's like heat being applied to your thoughts. If you resist the temptation to think negatively, that fire doesn't destroy you, it shapes you. Training the mind like a muscle. Discipline of thought isn't a one-time act, it's daily training. You wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to stay strong for life. Your mind is no different, Hill said. Your mind is a workshop. It can produce fear or faith, poverty or riches, whatever you order it to produce. Each time you replace fear with faith, doubt with determination, or anger with patience, you strengthen your mental muscle. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll notice that the noise in your head has quieted. The weeds have been pulled. The garden has grown beautiful again. The real freedom: you can't control everything that happens to you. But you can always control what happens inside you. That is where real freedom begins, not in wealth, or power, or comfort, but in mastering the one thing that shapes your entire world: your thoughts. When your mind is disciplined, no failure can defeat you, no insult can wound you deeply, and no fear can hold you captive, because you finally understand what Napoleon Hill meant when he said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Call to action. If this message speaks to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their thoughts hold power. Like, subscribe, and comment below. What's one thought you've decided to stop believing today? Title: The Power of Persistence, Part 5, according to Napoleon Hill, from the series When Pain Becomes Purpose. Look, he had failed 30 times before success came knocking. 30 doors slammed in his face. 30 investors said no. 30 sleepless nights spent wondering if he was wasting his life. But he kept going, because deep down, he believed what Napoleon Hill once wrote: "Victory is always possible for the person who refuses to stop fighting." This is the story of that fight, the quiet, stubborn power called persistence, and why it separates dreamers from achievers. Part 5. The Power of Persistence. Napoleon Hill believed that persistence was the heart of success. He called it the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. It wasn't luck, talent, or even opportunity that made people great. It was their refusal to quit when everything seemed lost. Every person who ever achieved something remarkable had one thing in common: they kept moving forward, one painful, uncertain step at a time. The tale of the gold miner. Hill often told a story about a man named R.U. Darby who joined the Colorado Gold Rush. After months of digging, Darby found a small vein of gold. Excited, he brought in heavy machinery and started mining. But after a few weeks, the gold disappeared. Frustrated, he gave up and sold his equipment to a junk dealer for a few $100s. The dealer called in an engineer to examine the mine. The expert discovered that Darby had stopped digging just 3 feet from one of the richest gold veins in Colorado history. 3 feet away from fortune. And he quit. Darby later became a successful life insurance salesman, never forgetting that lesson. He told Hill, "I learned to keep on digging no matter how hard it gets." That's persistence. The man who refused to quit. In 1905, a young writer named Thomas Edison was struggling. His inventions kept failing. Investors mocked him. The newspapers called him a fraud for promising an electric light that could burn for hundreds of hours. One day, a friend asked him, "Tom, why don't you give up? You've failed thousands of times." Edison smiled and said, "I haven't failed. I've simply found 10,000 ways that won't work." That one line defines persistence, the ability to look at defeat and see it as progress. Edison didn't just invent the light bulb. He invented endurance, the hidden power behind every success. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years studying the most successful men in America: Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and others. He found that every one of them had faced failure so great that most people would have given up. But they didn't. Ford lost everything twice before the Model T changed the world. Carnegie was mocked for his Scottish accent and poor background. They didn't win because they were the smartest. They won because they were relentless. Hill wrote, "Persistence is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. Without it, your dreams remain fragile. With it, they become unbreakable." The American farmer's lesson. There was once a farmer in Kansas who planted a field of corn. For weeks, nothing grew. His neighbors laughed and said the soil was bad. But he refused to plow it under. He watered it every morning, worked it every night, and kept believing that something was happening beneath the surface. Then one morning, tiny green shoots broke through the earth. Within weeks, the field was golden. The truth is, growth always happens before it's visible. The same is true for your dreams. Just because you can't see results yet doesn't mean nothing's happening. Persistence keeps you going until the roots of success reach daylight. When everything falls apart, Hill knew that the darkest moments are the real tests. He said that most people give up when success is just around the corner. It's easy to stay positive when things are working. But when the world goes silent, when no one believes in you, when your heart is tired, when your plans collapse, that's when persistence either dies or becomes invincible. Hill told of one man who lost his job, his home, and his family during the Great Depression. For months, he slept on park benches, too ashamed to ask for help. But every morning, he repeated to himself, "I was born to succeed." Eventually, he found work, rebuilt his life, and became one of Hill's most loyal students. Persistence isn't glamorous. It's the quiet voice that says, "Try again." The discipline behind persistence doesn't just happen, it's built, like a muscle. Hill taught that it grows from 4 foundations. 1. Definite purpose. Know exactly what you want. Without a clear goal, your energy scatters. 2. Strong desire. You must want it badly enough. A weak desire brings weak results. 3. Faith. Believe that you can achieve it, even when you don't yet see how. 4. Habit. Keep showing up. Every day. No excuses. Most people fail not because they're weak, but because they never formed the habit of persistence. A moment of choice. There will always come a day when you'll be tempted to stop trying. When you'll think, maybe it's not meant to be. That's the moment Hill said separates winners from the rest. He wrote, "The person who stops one step short of success never knows how close they were." When you reach that breaking point, remember this. Every great success story started with someone who felt exactly like you, but refused to quit. The carpenter's legacy. There's an old story of a carpenter who worked faithfully for decades. One day, his boss told him to build one final house before retirement. The carpenter, tired and frustrated, decided to cut corners. Cheaper materials, rushed work. When it was done, the boss handed him the keys and said, "This house is my gift to you." The carpenter's heart sank. He had built his own home, but poorly. That's life. Every time you give less than your best, you're building your own future, and you'll be the one living in it. Persistence isn't just about business, it's about character. About showing up even when you don't feel like it. The reward of the persistent. Napoleon Hill wrote, "There is no substitute for persistence. It cannot be replaced by genius, talent, or luck. When you persist, the world begins to shift in your favor. People notice your consistency. Opportunities find their way to you. Even the universe seems to conspire to help those who refuse to give up. Because persistence, in the end, is faith in motion." Closing reflection. There will always be days when you want to stop. But remember, every storm passes. Every tunnel has an end. Every failure carries the seed of a greater success. Keep digging. Keep believing. Keep walking. You never know, you might be just 3 feet from gold. Call to action. If this story inspired you, share it with someone standing on the edge of giving up. Subscribe, like, and comment below. What's one dream you refuse to quit on, no matter what? Title: The Unbreakable Spirit. Final part, according to Napoleon Hill, from the series. When pain becomes purpose. Look, there comes a moment when everything you've worked for feels like it's slipping away. The doors close, the phone stops ringing, and silence becomes your only companion. Most people give up right here, just before life is about to change. But those who refuse to bow, who summon the courage to stand one more time, discover what Napoleon Hill called the unbreakable spirit, the invisible force that turns pain into purpose and defeat into destiny. This is the story of that spirit, the final chapter of persistence, faith, and victory. Part 6. The Unbreakable Spirit. Napoleon Hill spent over 2 decades studying the most powerful people of his time, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, and found a single truth connecting them all. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But that seed only grows in the soil of faith, watered by persistence, and protected by resilience. In this final part, we'll uncover how ordinary men and women transformed crushing failure into greatness, because they refused to break. The night before success. Hill wrote of a salesman who once stood outside a steel mill in Pittsburgh during a snowstorm, trying to sell his company's products. Door after door slammed in his face. By nightfall, his clothes were soaked, his body numb. He sat on a curb, ready to quit, when he remembered something his mentor told him. When you are about to give up, that's when you're closest to your goal. So he stood up, walked into one more office, and that final meeting changed his life. The mill owner placed the largest order his company had ever received. Persistence is not about never falling, it's about rising one more time than you fall. The power of belief. Napoleon Hill called belief the starting point of all achievement. He saw faith not as something mystical, but as a mental habit, a way of seeing the invisible. Hill himself faced years of hardship. He lost jobs, faced ridicule, and went hungry while writing Think and Grow Rich. But every morning, he looked into the mirror and said aloud, "I will finish this book. It will inspire millions." He didn't say this to impress anyone. He said it to remind himself of the truth, that the mind shapes reality, and he was right. That single book became one of the most influential works in history, transforming lives for nearly a century. Faith, Hill believed, was the bridge between dreams and reality. You don't need to see the entire path, just the next step. The story of Henry Ford. Before Henry Ford built the first Model T, he was fired from 2 jobs and went bankrupt twice. People laughed at his dream of building a car for the common man. But Ford saw what others couldn't. He believed that if he persisted long enough, the world would eventually see his vision too. When asked how he kept going after so many failures, he said, "Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal." That single sentence holds Hill's entire philosophy. Focus on the dream, not the struggle. The moment you fix your mind on possibility instead of pain, the world begins to move in your favor. The test of the spirit. There's a story about a young man who once went to an old master and said, "I want success as badly as you breathe." The master took him to a river, pushed his head underwater, and held it there. The young man kicked and struggled until the master finally let him up. Gasping for air, the young man shouted, "Why did you do that?" The master said, "When you want success as much as you wanted air, you will have it." That is the essence of the unbreakable spirit. You cannot half-want greatness. You must hunger for it, breathe it, dream it, live it, until nothing can stop you. From pain to power. In his studies, Hill found that most people who achieved greatness did so after they had suffered defeat. One man he met had lost everything during the Depression. His business was gone, his family was hungry, and hope was thin. One night, he walked the streets of Chicago, ready to end his life. But he remembered a single line from Hill's early writing. "Your greatest success will often come just one step beyond your greatest failure." He went home, wrote out a plan for a new business, and began again, with nothing but determination. Within 5 years, he had rebuilt his fortune and was employing hundreds. The pain that nearly destroyed him became the fire that forged him. Pain, Hill taught, is the universe's way of preparing you for your purpose. The secret ingredient. You've now learned the pillars of success according to Napoleon Hill. Desire, the burning wish to achieve something great. Faith, the belief that it can be done. Autosuggestion, the practice of training your thoughts. Specialized knowledge, the wisdom you gather along the way. Persistence, the refusal to give up, no matter what. Mastermind, the power of working with others who share your vision. But all of these depend on one final ingredient: spirit. The unbreakable spirit is what keeps you alive when life knocks you down. It's what whispers, "Not yet," when failure says, "It's over." It's what makes you stronger than circumstances and greater than pain. The moment of awakening. Hill often said, "The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis." Think about that. The very moment when life seems impossible, that's when transformation begins. Because pressure creates diamonds. Fire forges steel. And adversity shapes character. So when your plans fall apart, when people doubt you, when the world turns cold, remember, this is not the end. This is the beginning of your rise. Legacy of an unbreakable spirit. Napoleon Hill died in 1970, but his teachings live on because they touch something eternal in us. The human will to rise. He proved that success isn't a matter of luck or birth, it's a matter of choice. You can choose to quit, or you can choose to fight one more round. You can let pain define you, or you can let it refine you. The spirit of persistence, faith, and discipline has no limit. And once you awaken it, nothing, no failure, no loss, no fear, can stop you. That is the essence of the unbreakable spirit. Closing words. So now, as this series ends, ask yourself, what will you do with your pain? Will you let it chain you, or will you let it shape you? Because in every struggle, there's a choice. You can surrender, or you can rise. Rise, stand tall, keep moving forward. For within you lies the same power that built nations, cured diseases, and turned dreams into reality. The power Napoleon Hill called the mastermind of human will. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the life you were meant to build. Call to action. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's ready to rise again. Speech Alone. Comment below. What does unbreakable spirit mean to you? Television. Subscribe for more powerful, story-driven lessons inspired by Napoleon Hill's timeless philosophy. Because together we rise.